My name is Elizabeth Atchoi, and I'm here to present our little adventure in seabird vision and light pollution. This is most of my PhD that I am nearly completing with all my co-authors and colleagues that have been helping me throughout this process. So, the issue, as Brigitte has mentioned, and as probably most people who live in coastal towns where petrols or shearwaters colonies are around, you are familiar with this, but if you are not, in coastal urban areas where there's light pollution, we find that young birds, when they fledge, meaning when they leave their nest for the first time, they start to fly for the first time, they congregate on these areas and they just either bump into things or exhaustion takes over and then they fall. So we call this fallouts. And fallouts are extremely conspicuous events. They occur all over the globe, with over 50 species recorded in surroundings of this type. And because it's such a conspicuous event, we have rescue campaigns, which is mostly citizen science merged together with research, merged together with volunteers, and everybody gets together and roams the night in the streets looking for these birds. The first rescue campaign was in Hawaii, because they have a couple of species that happen a lot, and so they created the Save Our Shearwaters, and then in the Azores is the second oldest rescue campaign, mostly for the Cory's shearwaters. So it's still as Save Our Shearwaters, but it's SOS Cagajo, which means Save Our Cagajos. Basically what this means is that we have decades of knowledge that has been collected over the years. And what do we know so far? So the environmental conditions, and this is probably obvious for most of you, nights where we have fuller moons, so higher moon illumination, we have a decrease in the number of grounded birds found, and this is because we think it's because the moon kind of culminates the light pollution, and birds don't fall as often. But then when you have strong winds pushing inland, or mist or rain, like every day in the Azores, we have an increase in fallout numbers, or an increase in the number of birds found. So this is for the environment that we already know. The biological aspects, what we know, most, if not all, are juveniles. So juveniles here are meant to be the fledglings. So not it doesn't have a bird doesn't have a year old. It's just a chick that just left the nest. There are some records of adults, but few, and probably a lot of them are mislabeled. And I know this personally because a lot of people that I work with would put adults if there's no down feathers, even though it's clearly a cohort chick that just fledged. And we know that most of the species that are affected are procellariforms, so from this order of seabirds. These birds have these little nostrils here. There are many characteristics. They're oceanic birds. But not all of the procellariforms are affected, and others, not too many, but some, like the puffins in Canada, and other families also are present in Bried units. Right. Okay, so we have this information. This is the beginning of my PhD, and what did we thought? Well, let's see what these species that fall have in common and what differentiates them from the ones that are not affected. And what we found was a very simple difference. Look at this dummy. This is an albatross chick. It's a proselytiform bird, and it's not present in fallouts. And the difference here, you can see the nest is on the outside. So open nesters is what we call them, that birds that nest on the open. The chick will develop with cycles of day and night, light, dark, in a natural setting, and if there's light pollution, they will be exposed to it as well. All the birds, all the species that are present in fallouts are burrow nesters. So these ones, the egg will grow, develop, hatch, the chick will develop and grow in dark environments with little to no light stimuli. Yay! So then we went a little further and we tried to figure out, okay, darkness. So this is the common link between all of them. And so what does this have to do? It has to do with vision somehow, right? Because the light messes up. And then we found this study with a proselytiform species, the leech storm petrel, it's a little tiny thing, where they checked, and the olfactory system, since the chick was really 1 week old, it develops really quickly, and it develops to an adult functioning level while still chicks. But the visual system is slower, and when they fledge, it's still processing the development of the visual system. Even though these birds and the birds that I work with, the chorus shearwater, they open their eyes at 2 days old. So the mechanical part is there, it's just that the rest is taking a little bit longer. Okay, so we had our first hypothesis, and now we could experiment. Right, this is the first paper where we just threw down this hypothesis that due to the lack of light stimuli during the development of these birds, they get to fledge without a very functional visual system. So we call it an underdeveloped visual system and untrained visual system. The difference here is the underdeveloped could be a mechanical, morphological factor, but even if the eye is completely formed, the retina, everything is completely formed, it still needs the neurological pathways to form to understand what they are seeing. So the retina and the eye needs to be trained with light to resolve the environment. Okay, so our hypothesis is that because they are developing in the dark, when they get out, they don't know what's happening, and with the lights, they're like, ah, and they fall. Okay, so now we needed to test this hypothesis, and we tortured just a little bit baby chicks, and we selected 25 chicks across 5 groups. And what we did is we exposed different groups to light treatments at different ages. So for instance, group 1 was exposed to light since 3 weeks old, and group 5 was only exposed to light at 11 weeks old, which is really close to fledging. These are treatments. It was a basic system. It's a box with an artificial nest that was dark, and then we had a light on the other end. We used red and blue lights because they are at the end of the spectrum, and because we could have just used white light, but we wanted to add an extra layer of detail to see if actually the wavelengths makes any difference. What we saw was that age had no impact on the responses to light. So basically, a chick 3 weeks old or a chick nearly fledged that had not been exposed to light did not show many reactions or non-reactions at all. And young chicks could react if they have been exposed. So here we see they react more to the blue light than to the red one, but it increases as the exposure level increases. So basically, the more those chicks were exposed to our light treatments, the more they responded, which for us means that their visual system was being more functional. Wait, sorry. Yes. Okay, so is this trend observed in other personalized farm species? This trend being the dark development and then the fledgling with underdeveloped vision? And the answer is yes, at least for chorus shearwater. And the main conclusion for this second paper is that exposure to light will train and will increase visual ability. Conversely, because they are burrow nesters, they do not have this light input, so they will fledge and they will not know how to react. They will not know how to resolve their environment visually. And so we think this is one of the main factors that drives fallouts. Then we wanted to know, because there is still this question about attraction or disorientation, because there's no question that they come towards the light, or at least they congregate on lit areas. But we saw with the chicks, the responses of the chicks were going into the dark, which makes sense. It's a little chick. They want to be protected, so they go to the dark. But maybe the juveniles or the fledglings, as they need to go to the sea, they have different impulses. Maybe they had different, maybe they were attracted to lights. We don't know. So we tried, and we use a white maze with a control white-dark treatment and blue and red. We use birds that were rescued from, so juveniles from that year that were rescued in the campaign, and then we used adults as well to see if there was a difference. There was no difference between adults and juveniles, and all of them, well, not all of them, but the majority consistently chose the red over the blue exit on the maze, as this little one is going to show us. And also with the treatments of the white light and the dark, consistently these birds prefer the dark. So here we are, dark and red, dark and red. Here the difference, the red and the blue, they were modeled to be the same intensity for the chorus shearwater visual system. So they could differentiate the colors via wavelengths, but not via intensity. So we were actually seeing the responses to the wavelength. And the red light, as everybody knows, is a little bit less disturbing. Okay, so this is the conclusion of our last one. That there's no age difference regarding preference. They both prefer darker environments. What this means is that there's no attraction to light sources at close range. Now, the attraction at long range, we still don't know, but there's not positive phototaxis for sure. They like the dark, they don't like the lights. This is our conclusion. Finally, we wanted to know how long does this vulnerability last, and how long does these eyes have to be around the outside to start to function well. And this is a colleague of mine placing a GPS on a chorus. And what we found was that we didn't have a big sample because GPSs are expensive. But from the ones we had and other works from colleagues in Madeira, we see that for the first week, the birds stay around their natal islands. But there's negligible, if any, regroundings. So imagine a bird would go and we release them in sea, and the visual system is not good. So they would come back to, if they were attracted to the big lights, they would come back again, but we don't see that. What's the conclusion that needs more data is that their visual system actually are, their visual system so gets ready very fast during the first 24 hours of being at sea. And so the critical period for these species of birds that follow is between leaving the nests and 24 hours until they reach the ocean or fall into our streets. This is what I said. So 24 hours is critically. After that, they just go on with their lives. But it's astonishing because only a few hours of high vulnerability leads to thousands of birds falling. In Azores 2 years ago, we rescued over 9,000 birds in 2 weeks. So you have an idea, more or less. Yep, this is the conclusion. So developing in a dark burrow with little light stimuli will get you on an underdeveloped visual system, untrained visual system, increases their vulnerability to Allen. When they fledge, they share preferences for darker environments, both adults and chicks. And the critical period for vulnerability, and it's really high, it's the first 24 hours. After that, they have to make it on their own. And I found this on Dark Sky store, and I think it was appropriate. From the darkest depths of the night, we become enlightened, and this is basically what we have been doing. Most of us is staying up late during the nights and trying to get some answers. So, kia ora, thank you. That's it.
Great, thank you very much for that. And we have time for one quick question, perhaps. Well, I've just got a
Explain everything.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If this first 24-hour period is so crucial, what is the variability in the fledging? Like, do they all fledge at the same time? Is there a really small window where we need to be extra careful, or is this sort of spread across the colony, and does it stretch for weeks?
So it depends on the species. Chorus shearwater is very synchronous. Other species are not as synchronous. For chorus shearwaters, the fallouts occur mainly during 2 weeks, always last week of October and first week of November. The knowledge of the 24 hours is more knowledge for us than for the mitigation actions, because the mitigation action that has been applied is via the rescue campaigns, so we're going to get them anyway. Of course, there's going to be variability, and some will fledge earlier, some will fledge later, but the mitigation that exists already covers that period. Otherwise, we cannot follow each individual and waiting for them to fledge so we can put them out to sea. But what we can do is, instead of mitigating, is preventing, and so shading the light. And we have some actions where they turn off the lights during those days, but it's hard to turn off the whole island. So it's some spots that we identified that were more critical, and it's been a process. So they are covering some lights, they're disconnecting some lights during those times. Try and prevent these groundings. So what we want is for them to just go to sea.
Great. Let's thank Elizabeth again.